Hi, I've had to take a break from the previous parts of the video that I was making, so I had to regenerate the graph so it looks a bit different from what it was before. Okay, but we got up to this point whereby we got some data coming through, and now actually we have a new problem. If you scroll down, or if I scroll down to the bottom of my table, I will see that there's 105 data points, but the graph only plots up to about 60. Now I can manually adjust the range at which it will plot up to, but I would like it to do it automatically. And indeed, actually it did that in the very beginning. Let me just delete the table in the data. Okay, all my data's gone now. And look at the x-axis, 0, 0.2, 0.4. That's because of the previous manual settings I had. If I start to acquire some data, so Control A, COM port 3, click on connect. Watch what happens to the x-axis as that data comes through. You see, it's automatically adjusting itself. Let me just wiggle the pot a little bit, get some variation in the data coming through. Okay, so you can see there's an automatic scaling function going on up to the maximum point of 60 data points. So it's quite good at the beginning. It's showing me how things are changing. It's expanding the axes accordingly, so all the data is given as much space as possible to plot it on. So that's good. I like that. So it's a bit of a tragedy that it ends at 60. And if I manually adjust it, then that problem will just reoccur later on when I've reached the maximum level that I set. So it's not so great at the moment. So let's just let it run to 60 just to prove that it will terminate at that stage. I'm still adjusting my potentiometer. There we go. It stopped. But you can see from the red bar on the left hand side that data is still coming through. And if I scroll down to my data table, you will see that indeed data is being logged. There we go. So we need to get rid of that problem. It's actually quite easy to do. Close that. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to define a name for the range of all the data that we could have. We're going to do that for our x-axis values and also the y-axis values. So how do we do that? Well, let me just flip to a text file that I made which talks about this. So here we go. We're going to use something called the offset function. The offset function is actually specifically made to kind of access data in various parts of a table. So we can use this function, this inbuilt function, to help us. We're going to use this set of instructions here, which is quite complicated. If you want to understand this and learn about it, then I recommend you go to the YouTuber called Pivot Table Guy. He's made a large number of videos, excellent videos on charting and graphing using Excel. And here's just a few of them which deal with this topic of offset. So you can click on these links and you will be able to understand what he's doing. I don't have time to do that. I'm just going to adapt and paste in the relevant code. So I'm going to copy this. Okay, and then I'm going to follow these instructions. So I'm going to go into formula, define name, and basically enter this information. So back to my worksheet. So click on formulas. I've already got it highlighted here. And then define name. Give it a name. I'm going to say DataSetX. And I want this to apply to just this worksheet. So this worksheet is called example. It's always better to keep things local if you can. It actually helps prevent bugs and memory problems and so forth. And then I'm going to paste in that stuff I just wrote before. There we go. It's quite long. So if you want to get back to the earlier part of that instruction, you have to use your mouse button. If you use the arrow keys on your keyboard, it will actually start dumping data in the cells into this field. So use your mouse to scroll through it if you want to check it, which is kind of tedious really. You can actually expand the window so you can see the whole thing at once. That might be better. Okay, so I'll give my name. It applies to the example, and I've pasted in that code. I'm going to do the same thing for my y-axis values. That information I just pasted actually corresponded to column C, which is my x-axis values. I want to do the same thing for my y-axis values now. So if I go back to that text file, I already have it pre-written out. It's exactly the same before, really, except instead of having C for my x-axis values, I've got D in here, which refers to my y-axis values. So I'm going to go back into that menu. I can do define name again if I wish, or use the device manager. There's the one I made before. So I want a new name, so click new. Give it a name, DataSetY. Make it apply to the worksheet where I have my chart, which is example, and then paste that long code in there. Yeah, column D. So this is my Y values. Okay, so I've got these two data names, and just having a quick look, you can see from the code that it's going to apply this data name to the range between D11 and D65,000. So even though those data cells at 60,000 are not being used, the name will apply to all of that. Now this function is actually quite clever. It will actually pick up the cells which actually have some data in them. So it's going to ignore the empty cells, which is nice. So click on close for that. Okay, now how do I use those names? So if I right click on the chart, choose select data, and I have two series here. Can't remember how many series I had when I previously made the earlier parts of this video, so I only want one series. I'm going to delete this one. Okay, so series 1, edit. And what I just do now is, after where it says example 1, which is the name of the example, which is the name of the worksheet, I'm going to leave the exclamation mark there, and I'm going to type in DataSetX. I'm going to copy this and then paste it in here and change that to DataSetY. So there, I've told it the chart to use the x-axis values using those names, those named ranges. And as you can see, it's automatically adjusted the scales. So there we go, we have dynamic plotting of data. Let's just delete the old data once more. Oops, I don't know how to delete data. Just press the wrong button, so delete. There we go. Graph is gone now. So I'm going to do my data acquisition again. COM port 3. You could actually go into the VBA code and set a default COM port number for this. The default is 13 in the code, so you have, if you are not going to change your COM port number, it might be a good idea to do that if you get tired of keep on changing this all the time. So connect. Right, so my Arduino is pumping through some data. I'm going to adjust my pot again. We can see some automatic scaling of the axes. Unfortunately, it's going to take a while to get up to data point 60. I might edit the video out at this point, although that's going to take me some more work to patch everything back together again. So maybe I'll just impose upon you and sap your time. You have a fast forward button on your video player, so if you want, you can use that. So I'm going to let it go up to 60. And then when it gets close to 60, I'm going to start to cross my fingers and hope it works. So I'm just keep on adjusting the pot just to make my graph look a bit nicer. A little bit crazy now with maximums. Okay, it's getting close to that 60 point. I'm going to chill out a bit. Yeah, it's gone beyond 60. Hooray, it's working. Fantastic. That's really good. So we can see the trend of data points for a huge number of data, 65,000. This is very nice. Okay, I'm going to stop that now. Good, so we've solved that problem. There's one other thing I would like to show you in this video. and that is how to bring up this interface menu. I've been saying before we press Control A to bring that up, but Control A, when you've got a lot of amount of data, is actually very useful because it will be able to select all, which is the normal setting for Control A. So I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to make this move on to the Control E hotkey. Why Control E? Well, I did a little bit of research, and Control E is not really used in Excel for anything, so it's a kind of free hotkey. So how do we do that? Let's go into Developer and click on Macro. Now that interface form was a macro. When you press Control A, it runs this macro which brings up the form. So let's go into Options, and I can type in Control E. It used to say A, now it says Control E. Click OK. No need to run it because I'm going to run it manually on the keyboard. Press Control and E, bing, there we go. It comes up. So I've changed it. But remember, in the instructions it still says Control and A. So really, if you want to change the hotkey, you should go back into the instructions and alter them. So let's do that now. And so instructions, we see a reference to Control A. So let's change that to Control E. Okay. We also have some in the code. So let's view the code. Anything in the modules about that? Yep, there is. There's a Control A here, so we want to change that to Control E. The workbook, when we first open the workbook, we get that dialog box saying use Control A to open up the sheet, so we need to change that as well. Anything else? There's probably a few other places. I'm looking around. I don't want to miss any out, or else it's going to cause a bit of confusion later. Okay. What about the form? The form doesn't say anything.